So in the financial world, we call this the quilt. And if the quilt looks back over the last 10 years, and
Hmm.
every single sector of the economy is a different color, and it shows you what the best performing was, and it ranks them in order from top to bottom, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, U.S. large cap has been at the top the last 4 years. But if
Right,
you look back at the last 10, it's all over the board. Sometimes
right,
emerging markets are better, sometimes mid cap or small cap, sometimes bonds outperform, right? And so I think it's important when I hear that, it sounds a little bubbly to me, right? A little
right,
bubbly.
right.
And I'll get to that, in 1 second here. But what I would say to somebody.
Welcome to Investing for Generational Wealth. I'm John Lai from Clive Capital, where we help high earners just like you invest outside of the stock market to passively achieve long-term wealth generation through superior risk-adjusted returns, long-term passive income or cash flow, and tax benefits. Together with investors, we're building over 500 single-family homes and renovating over 1,000 apartments, multifamily apartments. And we're expanding into private debts, industrial commercial real estate, oil and gas ventures, and much more to create a diversified and balanced portfolio. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. As always, we're not financial advisors, unlike our guest today. All investments are subject to risks, including possible loss of the money you invest. So please perform your due diligence prior to making any investment decisions. And of course, consult your investment advisor, your CPA, and your attorney before making those investments. I'm your host today, John Lai, and welcome to today's episode, Building Wealth Through Leverage, Smart Debt, Passive Income, and Legacy Strategies. And today's guest is Alan Franks. Alan's a CFP and has over 15 years of experience in financial planning. He focuses on strategies that prioritize long-term financial success over product sales. He's going to cover topics like leveraging smart debt to accelerate wealth building, strategies for generating passive income that supports financial independence, and then practical steps to create legacy plan for future generations. So thank you for being with us, Alan, today. And I gave a bit of background on your experiences, but could you expand a little bit more and talk about how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. And John, thanks so much for having me on. I love talking about this stuff. Yeah, this has been quite a journey. I've been doing this for 15 years now. And, if y'all know any financial advisors that started like I did straight out of college and have been doing this for 15 years, just go give them a hug, right? Because we have some scars. We've got some battle wounds here.
Right.
When I started, there was no such thing as a base salary. I like to say I ate a chit sandwich for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I got stood up on so many lunches, right? I feel like I was just running into a brick wall until a brick barely budged, right? I can't tell you how many times I almost quit, but thank God I did it on there. But truth is, this journey went back much further than that. I actually highlighted in my book how one person really made just a drastic impact on my life. I was kind of just floating through life, and my grades weren't really good. Frankly, I was really overweight. I was antisocial. Like things were not going in the right direction. I know I was a kid, but like there's an SNL skit about how a lot of kids like toys, but some kids need like a thinking well, right? And that
Mhm.
was me. Like I was the kid that needed the thinking well, right? I was
Yeah.
a deep thinker, but I was super sensitive, right? And let's just say that the trajectory wasn't good. And um, my first day of fourth grade, I walked into a classroom and I will never forget the look in Libby Buck's eyes when she basically told me to get my shit together, right? And like it was first day, she's like, I'm not putting up with your half-ass efforts anymore. And she rode me all year. And I don't know where I would be without that one person. But I do know this, that one person really inspired me to be that person for other people, right? It showed the impact that one person can make on another. And that's what I love most about my job is that when we take on a new client, we are a change agent. We are reverse engineering a financial plan here to help them hit their specific life goals. We're helping people get to where they want to go more cost effectively, more tax advantagely, and overall quicker than they other would be, and helping them live their fullest lives. So I really see myself in that fourth grade teacher, Libby Buck, that did so much for me. But that was the genesis of just transformation of really hitting the books hard, really taking stuff seriously. But also, I got to watch my father build multi-generational wealth in one generation, right? His dad worked at a gas station. My dad, moved down to Atlanta, Georgia to go to Life College to be a chiropractor. And let me tell you something, he's a damn good chiropractor, but even the best chiropractors don't make that much money, right? But I got to see him buy Rich Dad Poor Dad and read it. He read us The Science of Getting Rich. We were well educated in Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich growing up here. We were really taught. I can't tell you how many times we listened to a Zig Ziglar tape in the car, right? I grew up on this stuff. I had this, at the time it was like, gosh, this is so stupid. But, now looking back, like he was hardwiring our brain here to think big. But the best thing he ever did is he bought us this game called Cash Flow. And if you've got young
Yes.
kids, I cannot recommend this enough. My dad and the three boys that we had, we played Cash Flow every weekend, and it was so great. As a matter of fact, that we just landed a brand new client today who's big into real estate and climate controlled storage and a lot of other stuff. And they brought their daughter to the meeting, and I love that because my dad brought me to his financial planning meetings. And I asked him, hey, have you all played Cash Flow yet? And they said, we just bought it. We're going up to the mountains this week and we're going to play it for the first time. So I
Oh.
whispered into their 10-year-old daughter's ear the secrets of winning the game. So I'm hoping that he wins, right?
Right.
But watching my dad, go out and buy rental homes and run businesses and things like that, that was really the genesis of me becoming a financial advisor. And then I did study economics in undergrad. But the truth is, John, the reason I got into this is I didn't have another choice. 2010 hit, there were no jobs, right? I
Mhm.
thought I was going to be a jet setting consultant somewhere. I thought I was going to be working for BCG somewhere, right? And it just turned out in 2010, those jobs were really hard to find. So I found myself, frankly, in a commission-only sales role, just trying to survive.
Yeah. 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 That's a great story. Thank you for that. And 2010 was really, really tough. So I'm glad you got to where you are today, and you can help your clients. Hopefully, you can impart some of that wisdom on the podcast today.
Yeah, totally, totally. You know what's so? Let's jump ahead on this one topic. Like, let's talk about 2010 real quick, because I had to talk a client off the ledge today. We're in a crazy world right now, John. I don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. My dad's chiropractic business should be in full swing because I'm getting whiplash with all the news that's coming at us left and right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a client today who's very concerned about the state of the world. Okay.
Right.
And I've got to meet, it's funny. I've got to be centrist because I'll be talking far left and I'm in Georgia, so we'll go far right, right? So I've got to, get everybody back to being to sanity, right?
Yep.
And what I told this person is I said, hey, it's cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, and eventually it will have cost me millions by not being positive early on. It pays to be positive. Because when I got in this industry in 2010, there was nothing really positive about it. The world, I mean, that was a true crisis, John. Like that was really, really bad, right?
Right.
And everybody was scared of the stock market, including myself, and I'm in this industry, right? And if I, looking back, it was obviously the best time to be buying homes, to be buying stocks,
Right.
right? And so, what I've come to the conclusion, John, is that if the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket, it doesn't matter if you own stocks or crypto or have money, even gold. If we're going to live in an apocalypse, who gives a shit? So let's bet on things working out well, and let's be aggressive and be positive. Because overall, okay, if you're negative and you're right, all you have is to be able to say, "I told you so." That's
Right.
all, right?
Right.
But guess what? 99 50% chance that things are going to get a lot better going forward, right? So it
Yeah.
just needs to be positive, and I think it's important during these times to remind everybody of that.
Yeah, yeah. No, to dovetail on that, the last 4 years has been really good for the stock
Yeah,
market, right? Like people look
yeah,
back and they say and they expect I'm going to make additional 21, 24% in the future years, and realistically, historically, that's not the trend, right? And so, how do
totally.
you those people with those expectations, what do
Right.
you counsel them? What do you say to them as advice?
Yeah. So in the financial world, we call this the quilt. And if the quilt looks back over the last 10 years, and
Hmm.
it's in every single sector of the economy is a different color, and it shows you what the best performing was, and it ranks them in order from top to bottom, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, US large cap has been at the top the last 4 years. But if
Right,
you look back at the last 10, it's all over the board. Sometimes
right,
emerging markets are better, sometimes mid cap or small cap, sometimes bonds outperform, right? And so I think it's important when I hear that, it sounds a little bubbly to me, right? A little
right,
bubbly.
right.
And I'll get to that, in 1 second here. But what I would say to somebody is, hey, as much as you want to go all in on U.S. large cap, I just know the risk, right? So the quickest way to make a lot of money is a concentration of assets. It's also the quickest way to lose a lot of money. So if we're
Hmm.
going to go with the Magnificent Seven and ride or die, just know it's going to be a roller coaster, and you might be right. However, who knows, right? Yeah, who knows what the next technology out of China is going to do, right? I'm kind of
Yep.
surprised that the last one didn't have a little bit more waves there, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm not certain that we're done with that reverberation of that hit, right? I'm not certain that that case is closed yet, but I think it's good to at least have some exposure to other markets. However, I will say this, John, when you look at the other world and the other sectors, let's look at two sectors: developed markets and emerging markets. Okay, developed markets, I'm having a hard time believing that Europe's going to create anything more than a tourist destination for us going forward. I'm
Mhm.
really having a hard time seeing that, right? And I hate to say it, it's going to sound insensitive, but when you get 2 years of paternity leave for every child, like, it's hard to run profit. It's hard to run a company with that, right? And so
Mhm.
seeing is Europe creating less and less. Now they make great pasta, man. Like, I love Italy, right? And we're gonna go visit there a ton.
Yeah, yeah.
But when we're looking at developed markets, sure, I think they're going to be stable. They're a stabilizer. But from growth mode, I get curious. And then so much of emerging markets is still the Chinese market, right? And
Hmm.
they're really tripping over their communist shoelaces right now. So you kind of wonder where that's going to go. It's
Yep.
still a sleeping giant by all means, right? But it's definitely slowed down a little bit. So on one hand, I want to warn people, hey, well-diversified portfolio really help you out over the long term, right? But on the other hand, if you're a little U.S. large cap heavy, join the party, right? Because it's been a fun one.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it definitely has been beneficial slash lucrative in the last, call it 4 years, if you
Yeah.
invested correctly, right? Or if you just invested, frankly, in index funds.
Yeah, you got it, man. I think pretty much anybody could have made money in the U.S. large cap sector the last
Yes.
4 years, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to be a genius, right?
Right, right. Um, Diversification. So you
Yep.
probably counsel your uh, clients to diversify. Now you can diversify inside, as you said, the quilts inside a well-rounded portfolio of public equities. But in our world where we sit, like, well, we also counsel people to invest outside of the public markets into private equity, right?
You
Uh,
got it.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of
So many
hey,
thoughts.
I- hey, guys, diversification doesn't just mean go getting a lot of different stocks and bonds. That's so easy today. The technology of mutual funds and ETFs have made that so easy to go
Mhm.
get 1,500 different equities in one single ETF. right? But when we're looking at diversification with clients, we're looking at three levels of diversification. The first one is different stocks and bonds there, but the second one is different asset classes. There's so much more to financial planning than just stocks and bonds, right? There's so many other different asset classes that we can look at, particularly what we're going to talk about today with real estate, right? Real estate, we have private equity, we have alternatives, we've got life insurances, right? There's so many different
Mhm.
ways that we can get assets outside of the public market that frankly will provide some stability, right? And maybe some of them are even non-correlated with the stock market,
Right.
right? So I love getting diversified with different asset classes. I do it myself personally. And the third diversifier that we'll talk about later, we'll put a pin in, is tax diversification. But let's focus, I certainly have some questions here about that second layer of diversification with real estate.
Yeah, yeah, and let's talk a little bit about real estate. How does well, what's your perspective on making recommendations on real estate for your clients? Does it depend on where they are in their kind of life cycle and in their lives?
I want to plant the seed years in advance on
Mm,
this, right?
right.
So I want to tell you what I did and why it may not be the solution anymore. So I did house hacking. Me and my wife, we bought our first
Sure.
home, and I borrowed from my life insurance policy to go buy that first home. Paid it back, went borrowed again from the life insurance to buy the second home. At that point, or a rental home, at that point, we had enough equity in our home. I was actually able to take out a home equity line of credit, right? And
Hmm.
we bought a duplex in Midtown Atlanta, and we were setting it up to be an Airbnb. And we
Right.
fell in love with the fact that there was a taco shop at the top of the street, there was a coffee place within walking distance, there was four breweries, and so we moved into a two-bedroom. We downsized to a two-bedroom, one bath in March of 2020, thinking we're never at home anyways, right? So
Yep.
we went March 2020, we downsized and boom, COVID hit. And we go from a not a big house, but like a 3-2, like a normal size starter home, right? To a 2-1, 900 square foot house where we see each other all the time. And
Right.
those are some of the most fun years of our lives. And what we ended up doing is because we had already Airbnb'd it for a little while, we already had the listing. So we actually put it back on Airbnb and we went and we traveled around the North Carolina mountains and worked remotely for
Oh,
about
that's
three
great.
months there with
Yeah.
our dogs. It was so fun. Obviously, we didn't have any kids when we did that. It would have been very hard to do then. But
Right. Right.
gosh, it was probably the coolest thing we've ever done. And then another duplex came across a couple streets over. We ended up buying that. And so here I am right now with six rental homes, which is just enough to be a headache and not necessarily enough to have a manager do it, right? And so where we've gone now is we are investing in a 130 unit apartment building. We're doing some hard money lending, right? And so when we're talking about diversification here, particularly with in the private sector, right? A couple things that
Mhm.
we need to be aware of is it's a little bit harder to diversify there, right? A lot of these minimums are 50K or
Right.
250K, right?
That's
And
right.
so what we really need to do is try to layer these in, not put all of our eggs in one basket, but maybe 100K here or 100K there, right? And then when you talk about diversification here, let's talk about what side of the balance sheet you want to be on, right? So there's two sides. We can be just like the private markets, we can be lenders, which is the equivalent of a bond, or we can be
Hmm.
owners, which is kind of the equivalent of an equity here, right? On the ownership side, you're going to have a lot more tax advantage growth on that end, right? But on the
Hmm.
lending side with interest rates right now, we're getting 18.5% on hard money lending, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Problem is for me and you and everybody else listening here is that 18% is taxable income, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
the last thing that I need and you need and people listening here is taxable income, right?
Yep.
So, at least here, in the state of Georgia, we're going to give 37 cents to Uncle Sam. We'll give 5.75 cents to Aunt Georgia. And, every dollar we get back, 42 cents will be out the door, right? So a
Right.
lot of our clients are looking, we want that balance and diversification of which side of the balance sheet that we're on. But on the other hand, particularly for younger people, we kind of want to be on the equity side. There's a lot more tax advantages and a lot more long-term growth there.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you talk about being a private lender. I did the same thing. I took out a HELOC on my home, took it. It was, this is a while back that I started up the HELOC, but 3% plus prime essentially. So it's 7 to 8%. And I took it and did the same thing with a private lender. Got 20, 25% at one point, which is a nice spread, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is a little bit riskier, right? And you have to do a
Yep.
lot more due diligence with operators with a private lender. But
Yep.
you could make up the money, and it's a little riskier investment, but you certainly can do that. The other thing we really should have done is a self-directed IRA and invested out of the self-directed IRA into that private lending. Then you could shield it from taxes.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a great way. And there's also other things we can do with that without having to do a self-directed. Like there's a Barings account that we have that is basically lending to private equity and returning about a
Mm.
12% dividend there.
Okay.
That's really good for people who need income, and that could be in an IRA. But there's no growth potential on that, right? Yeah, it's
Right.
12%, but where's the growth, right? For a lot of
Hmm.
people this podcast, we're young. We don't need more income. We need growth on that,
Yes. Yeah.
right? But you mentioned a great point, and the use of a HELOC. Gosh, it's so important, right? So we call the equity in our home, we call that a Blutarski. Okay, Blutarski is a character from Animal House whose GPA was 0.00. Right? I ask my clients all the time, "Hey,
Was
what
that
rate?"
John Belushi's character?
I think so, right? I think so. One of those guys, right? It's one of
Yeah.
my dad's favorite movies. But you know, uh, when we ask a client, "Hey, what's the rate of return of the equity in your home getting?" They know it. They answer immediately.
Right.
Zero, right? It's worse than your bank account, right?
Mm.
So we
Right.
got to get that money working for us, right? So I'm a big fan of a home equity line of credit for two purposes. Number one's an emergency fund.
Hmm.
Access to cash makes your situation safer. And so many people have trouble understanding that. Oh my gosh, another loan against my home. It's like, bro, you took out $1 million mortgage and now you're worried
Right.
about 250 grand
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
so what they don't understand, like whenever you have access to cash, it provides more security. What does that mean? That means that we can keep less in our actual cash accounts, invest more money, means we can be more aggressive with the way that we invest that money because the chances of
Hmm.
us touching it are much slimmer now that we have a HELOC we can access, right?
Yep.
And so if nothing else, get it as emergency fund. But realistically, John, you and I know that's a great opportunity as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And realistically, if it's an emergency fund, you don't really need to access it until an emergency happens, right?
$100%.
You're not paying any interest until that emergency does happen. So I definitely understand that perspective and appreciate that. Uh,
Yeah.
in terms of generating other types of passive income and or using, debt, or frankly, for that matter, like any other source of income, any recommendations there?
Yeah, yeah. Here's the big point. If you take away nothing else from listening to me, take away this. In this world of 30-second TikTok videos, we are getting highly focused on certain areas, right? And then all of a sudden it hits the algorithm, right? And next thing you know, all you're getting is real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate. And another person's getting crypto and crypto and crypto. Another person has picked this stock and picked this stock and picked this
Right.
stock. And next thing you know, you get really kind of just narrow focused on how to make money, and you go all in and become a real estate bro or a crypto bro or a stock junkie, right? I just want
Hmm.
to let you know, guys, we can do it all, right? You can do it all. And the way, in my opinion, the safest way to do this way I've structured this, is that I do believe in the public stock market. I do. Right. And I realize a lot of people are listening to this to hear about alternatives and private investments, right? But here's what I really believe in. I believe that most people make money and they spend it. They don't even save it. But for some people, they save it. And then eventually, very few save enough where they can start investing, right? And out of those, most people invest $1 and they get $1 working for them. All right. That's
Right.
not how wealthy people invest. And then wealthy people invest $1 and they get $1.50 working for them. Okay.
Hmm.
And the way that they do that is through a securities backed line of credit. All right. They
Mhm.
invest their money. Guys, let's say we don't even do anything crazy. We get 7%. Rule of 72, that money's going to double every 10 years, right? So we got
Mhm.
100K in there, right? It's going to be 210 to 420, 830, right? Okay, well, that's nice and steady. And that's the best thing about the public stock market is that you don't have to worry about it, so diversified. It's just, oh, of course, it goes down sometimes, but over time it goes up, right? But then we go and we borrow 50 cents on that dollar. And that is where people like John come in. Okay. Where you can then send John money, send the experts money. Great book called Who Not How. You don't need to buy it. I'm just going to tell you what it says. You don't need to know how to do this stuff. You need to know the right who to do it for you, right?
Right,
So
right.
instead of being like me, who's got 6 rental homes, who I've got to go over and change light bulbs every now and then, is ridiculous, right? Right? I'm never buying another individual residential real estate in my life, right?
Yeah.
Everything else now, I own enough businesses. From now on, I'm an investor, right? So we invest our money in the stock market, we borrow against it, we send it to people like John who will do what they do best, and now we've got $1.50 working for us. Now it is a loan; you do have to pay interest, but let's go back to the hard money lending concept because that's such an easy one. I'm borrowing at 7.5, and for easy math, let's say I'm making 17.5. That means for every $100,000 I send my buddy Jack down in Florida, I'm getting an extra 10% on top, right?
Right.
Get extra 10. So my money's growing in the stock market. It's going to double every 10 years, and I'm getting an extra 10%, right? Now, I didn't mean to do this on purpose, John, but this has really worked out well. That money from the hard money lending is actually really helping me pay the interest on my other lines of credit that I've got
Mm.
invested in long-term deals. For instance, the 130 unit apartment complex was supposed to break ground last March. There's no way it's breaking ground this March either, right? So it'll probably be Q4 break ground. That means early 27 before it gets finished. That means maybe 28 before I actually start getting a dividend on that, right? So
Yep. Yep.
it's a great deal. It's going to be a winner for us, but it's still costing me money every single month, because I've got that line of credit out there. So that hard money lending is helping me pay it. So it's kind of a nice little balance there on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you recommend that I know you said you're not going to buy any more residential real estate. Uh,
Yeah.
but do you recommend we have people that I think, you know, they see all the excitement, the bright lights of being a GP, like being an operator
Yeah.
versus being passively investing. Like if you have a W-2, you don't have time to be an operator, right? But some people see the bright lights of being an operator and see that there's so much more money to be made. Thoughts on that?
I think people just really hate their jobs in corporate
Yeah.
America.
Right.
And the truth is that I'm not certain that the grass is greener on that side, right?
Right.
Everything's
Right.
got headaches, everything's got problems, right? Obviously, if you are it's all right, let's take a residential real estate as an analogy here, right? If you're the main person, if you're the owner on it, it's higher risk, higher reward. You will make more money if you're doing a lot of the work, right? But from my understanding of how GPs get paid, I think they get paid mostly on the exit, on the back end. I'm certain that
That's
they're
right.
getting a management fee early on, right? But okay, let's say that the GP takes a 25% fee on the back end or whatever, right? I don't care. They're making me money, right? They're making
Yep.
me money.
Yeah.
I don't care what that fee is. As a matter of fact, the guy that I'm working with has worked so daggum hard on this deal that we've got going. I'm rooting for him right now. I'm like, man, you need to take a larger fee this time, right? I would say this. I'm a big advocate of doing what I do best and then letting people like you do what they do best. Right. So that's all I'll say on that is that, hey, if you really hate your job that much and you really love this stuff that much, sure, go for it. Give it a shot. Right.
Right. Right.
There is I've never had a W-2 income. I've never had a salary. And every now and then, I just, I find myself daydreaming about how nice it would be to be an employee, you know?
Yep. Yep.
It sounds really nice to me sometimes, right? So I tell everybody, like, you can live a very nice, cush life being a highly paid W-2, but be a business owner on the side over here too, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That to me is a really good mix.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting you say that. When you look at high net worth, ultra high net worth individuals, their equities make up 30% of their portfolio. Maybe their, primary residence make up an additional 5 to 10%. But like businesses that they own and private equity that they're invested in make
Yeah.
up the rest, right?
Yeah.
And like high, value. And that's how they make a lot of their money. It's like they own businesses, they understand the tax law, they understand
Yes.
how it works, and they understand like where to place their money for a higher return than they'll get in the stock market. And then hopefully better control, right?
Yeah. Yep, that totally right. So my dad was a business owner. His dad was a business owner. We come from a long lines of business owners. Something about having tangible, I get it. Something about
Hmm.
having tangible assets like a business, like real estate. I will say this, in defense of the stock market's really easy, right? The stock
Yes. Yeah.
market, the plumbing never goes out on that thing, right?
Hmm.
So you never have bad tenants there. So in defense of the stock market, it's actually rather easy and frankly, truthfully, probably the most passive thing out there. I mean, when we talk about
Right.
passive income here, I really, besides maybe that hard money lending, my rental homes are not passive. I'll tell you that.
Right.
I was lied to. I was
Yeah.
lied to on that, right? So, so anyways, in defense of the stock market, it is easy. But that being said, I mean, if you want to know that there's three main ways to build wealth in America. The easiest way is the stock market. You click that box to put money in your 401k. Your company matches it. Hopefully, you got enough money left over to put into a taxable account or backdoor Roth or something like that, right? That's the
Right.
easiest way, and that's the most common way that people will probably become millionaires is through that, right? But if you want to break 10 million or something, you've got to either do the next two. The second easiest way is real estate, right? And frankly, just owning a home, your net worth has probably gone up 50% over the last 5 years just by
Right.
owning a home, right?
Right.
Um, and so that's been really nice here. And the good thing about real estate is it's inflationary resistant too. But the third way, and this is the hardest, the third way to make money is to start and sell a business, right? Or buy and sell a business. And that's
Yep.
really difficult. Not that many people are good at it. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty. But I mean, that's by far the best way to, to get into the tens of not hundreds of millions of net worth is that's you can't save your way to 10 million bucks, right? It would
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
really long time to do that,
That's right.
right? But you could invest and build real estate and maybe get there. But my thing is, why wouldn't we hit on all three? Why can't we hit on all three? Why can't
Sure.
we invest? Why can't we have some real estate? Even if you're, at a company like Amazon or Meta, I would consider stock options, right, as almost a little bit of business ownership there, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and there's so much wealth being created and tax problems being created by stock options, right? And so you don't necessarily have to go and be a founder of something. If you're getting in with the right company and they're giving you stock options, it might be phantom ownership, but damn it, it's still ownership of a company.
That's right. That's right. We do have a lot of people in our audience that are like highly paid individuals.
Yeah.
Their primary concern, besides investing the right way and kind of diversifying, is taxes,
Yeah.
right? Tax mitigation strategies,
Yeah.
they're always looking for something like that. What we're told growing up is like, oh, you have your 401k, you have your IRAs, maybe 529s, maybe HSAs and others. But, those are baseline, like what's the next level tax mitigation strategy that, you've
Yeah.
heard of that, you would recommend?
Yeah, yeah. So, our firm, obviously, we help everybody really get good at the basics and the fundamentals of financial planning. We're helping people with cash flow management. We're helping them price out their car and their home insurance, which is a mess right now in that world.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
them with their estate planning, helping them understand life insurance and how it fits into a financial plan and not just shoving it down their throats like a lot of life insurance salesmen do. Obviously, we're looking at all the different types of investments here, right? And we're looking at debt and leverage and helping people get more money to John here. But at the end of the day, we solve three problems at our firm. We solve income tax problems, we solve capital gains tax problems, and we solve estate tax problems, right? Now,
Right.
here's the if I've got this saying, this is actually original. I did not steal this from somebody because most of my right? Right? A good salesperson spots a problem. A great salesperson solves that problem, but the best salesperson creates the damn problem in the first place, right?
Right.
We can agree that those three problems are really problems that a lot of people would want to have, but they're still big problems, right? Now, when we talked about being a GP earlier and business owner versus investor, I do want to be clear. There are two tax playbooks here. There's a business owner's tax playbook and there's a W-2 tax playbook. And the W-2 tax playbook is about 2 paragraphs long, and the business owner tax playbook is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, right?
Right. Right.
So when we are working with a business owner, game on, so many different things that we can do here with a business owner. So if you own your business, we would work with you on legitimately adding kids to payroll, legitimately exercising the Augusta rule here. We would work with you on getting, solo Ks or IRAs or defined benefit pension plans where we can stock away hundreds of thousands of dollars a year and grow that tax deferred, right? But most of the listeners here are not in that category, right? They're in the W-2 category. So,
Right.
of course, we're going to start with the easiest stuff, right? Which is going to be maxing out the 401k, right? The one thing I would say is that if you're listening to this call, I want you to check with your HR to see if y'all have access to something called a mega backdoor Roth IRA. Okay. Everybody thinks the max that you could put into a 401k is $24,000. And
Mhm.
that is true from the employee standpoint, right? But you can actually put up to $69,000 a year, right?
Right.
So
Right.
mega backdoor Roth IRA, it's just a backdoor Roth IRA in your employer sponsored plan. You're doing a non-deductible contribution to your 401k and then immediately converting it to a Roth IRA, right?
Yep.
Money is never going to get taxed again, right? Never
Yep.
going to get taxed again as long as you take it out after 59 and a half, right? Now, of course, I'm a big fan of an HSA, right? We want to max out that HSA. We want to invest it, and then we don't want to use it for medical purposes, okay? We just want to keep it. Why would you ever take money out of the most tax advantaged vehicle in the IRS tax code? It's the holy trinity of tax advantages, the triple threat: tax deductible, gross tax deferred, and comes out tax free for qualified health expenses. Well, Alan, what if we don't have a lot of qualified? Don't worry, you will. If you live long enough, you will,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So how cool would it be to have 3, 4, 500 grand in an HSA for when you're old and you're going to the doctor twice a week, right? Now we can spend our 401k on more fun stuff, right?
Right.
So those are things that are kind of the basics that we would work with when we help people actually select their employee benefits, actually share their screen. We go through this with them. But what you're really asking for is, okay, what's bigger than a $7, $8,000, $8,400 HSA contribution? And the truth is that if you're making, maybe over 500,000, definitely over 1 million, you really need to be working and you really need to be looking at oil and tax credits. There's some really good bonus depreciation on there. The one
Hmm.
thing I would say about oil and gas tax credits, okay, the tax credits are phenomenal, but you gotta invest that money expecting never to see it again, and then be
Exactly. Right.
pleasantly surprised if you get money, right?
Right. Right.
Because I had an oil and gas guy call me, and buddy, they lay out, they put this presentation, they show you these graphs and these charts, and how they know that there's oil down there, right? And the other companies just missed it,
Yeah.
and I asked the guy, I'm like, all right, so tell me about the last four deals. He said, we missed on the last four deals. We had to close the well up on each of the last four deals, right?
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh, okay. Gotcha. Right. Now, if you're making $1 million a year and you're able to bonus depreciate 85% of what you put in, right, then you're at least maybe recouping half your money immediately on that. And then maybe then it's worth the risk. But we do need to at least look at that. Right. Now, there was a huge thing on the going around the Instagrams about the bonus depreciation on real estate, right? The cost segregation, bonus
Yes, yes, yes,
depreciation
yes, yeah.
with up teen million rules on what you got to do in order to get it, right? And now, unfortunately, I don't know where it is. Maybe it's at 60% now,
60,
but
it's at 60, that's right.
60, right? And so I think everybody's hopeful that they bump it back up. I'm
Right.
not sure it's worth the cost at 60%. Um, if they bump it back up to 80 or 100, that there might be something there. But that really works out well when we have a very high W-2 income earner and maybe a stay-at-home spouse that doesn't work, because then we don't have to worry about all those minor rules as much, because we can just make them a registered real estate advisor from a tax perspective there. And then they could use that, but because now it's typically rental home is passive income, but now all of a sudden
Right.
it's an active entity now, and so active losses can offset W-2 income, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
basically, bonus depreciation on both of those is the magic sauce. But once again, it's a lot easier on the oil and the gas to do it. With the residential real estate, we got to qualify, we got to get the cost seg done, we got to do all that.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
then one day you're going to sell the house and you're going to have already depreciated the whole damn thing, right?
Right.
And
And then you have
the,
to
the,
recapture, yeah, the
you
depreciation.
capture, right? So, anyways, but I will say this to all the W-2s out there, I do feel for you. We were on a trip to Tulum, a bachelor party, and this was our buddy's last bachelor party. And I would tell everybody, whenever you go on a guy's trip, bring a token poor person with you, because we did not, and we had bottle service everywhere we went. It was insanity, right? So we had the infinity pool overlooking the beach and the ocean, right? We had bottle service everywhere we went. We spent so much damn money on this thing. So we're doing the splitwise afterwards,
Right.
and half the group are entrepreneurs and the other half are W-2. And obviously all the entrepreneurs were like, hey, we talked about this, didn't we? We talked about
Right.
absolutely. It's a write-off, right?
Yes,
So I
right.
just text the group. I was like, man, my heart goes out to you W-2s right now, right?
Right.
So, there are definitely some things that we work on with our high income earning W-2s. That being said, the best tax deduction you could do is at least start one business.
Yes. Yeah. Then the business combined potentially with oil and gas, right? If you are charitable, charitable deductions has
Yeah. So
something to do with that.
okay, let's talk about this real quick. So I've got a tech client who a couple years older than me, basically started working in '08, and he just dollar cost averaged the S&P 500 ETF and QQQ
Right.
all the way to the top. So this guy, he's still in his 30s, got $1.5 million in his taxable account, and the capital gains on this thing are absolutely insane, right?
Right. Right.
We so what do? All right, well, we open up a charitable trust, right? We open up a charitable
Yeah.
trust. It's really easy to do, right? And we move the highest appreciated assets over to that trust. And with that, you get two tax advantages. Number one, you get the step up in basis, so you don't have to pay capital gains, right? So that's nice. And then
Hmm.
number two, though, is you get the immediate income deduction on your taxes that year for
Right.
charity. So
Right.
you get two. Now, would I put money in there that I wasn't going to donate? No, probably not.
Yeah.
But let's say, in this guy's scenario, he was big into his church, and he said, "Yeah, we're going to donate X amount a year." I'm like, "Well, why don't we just go ahead and move $250,000 over there? It's going to be, actually, I think what we did is like 200 this year, 200 next year, to kind of spread out to get tax benefits on both years. We're actually able to drop him down into a different tax bracket by doing that, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
so overall, it really made sense for him on that. Now, John, I tell you that story to tell you this. When the problem with indexers, that if you're because some people are listening, they love the indexes, right?
Right.
problem with the index is this. When you look at the S&P 500, on an average year, only about 70% of the stocks make money, the other 30 lose money. And realistically, what's really driving the growth is maybe, the tail end of about 10 stocks that are really driving it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the problem with you going out and buying QQQ or SPY or some sort of index here is that it seems really tax advantage on the surface. Hey, I'm not going to pay taxes until I sell this thing, right? Well,
Right.
guess what? You're going to let's you're probably going to sell it at some point, right? And so the problem is that there was an opportunity throughout the entire time here to go and do tax loss harvesting with the ones that lost it, right? So
Hmm.
luckily, what technology has allowed us to do now is something that used to be reserved for really just family offices and ultra wealthy, but it's called direct indexing, which is basically, hey, instead of owning an ETF, actually own the individual stocks, and an algorithm is going to be constantly, let's say Home Depot's down. Okay, so we're going to sell Home Depot and immediately go buy Lowe's, right? That
Right.
way, resetting our cost basis here, but we still are keeping the same exposure, right? Coke and
Hmm.
Pepsi is another great example, right? And so kind of, our playbook has been lately, particularly with how much growth in the US large cap, is to say, you know what, let's do some in the taxable. We don't like to have bonds in our taxable accounts. Obviously, if somebody bonds produce interest, I think of interest starts with I, income starts with I, right? So that's taxable income right there. Also, it's
Hmm.
not great for growth and not necessarily great for inflationary periods either, right? So we like to, direct index, and we like to get a securities-backed line of credit to go do stuff with you, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of our playbook, and the stuff that we do with you, that, in my opinion, that almost acts as our bonds, right? So when we borrow against our assets and against our securities, I do have two rules. One rule is it's got to be safe, and the other rule is it's really nice if it produces some level of income so that you can pay off the loan, right?
That's right. That's
And if
right.
we can hit on those two, now all of a sudden we've got our stocks fully stock account, and then that side is either the bond portion or, in reality, I think real estate's more like a utility stock. Maybe there's at least residential real estate, maybe 3% growth, but maybe a 10% dividend, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
something that's rather safe. And I think we're going to get back to more 2 to 3% growth in the real estate market. I think the last 5 years where home values have gone up 50% is an aberration. I think I don't think they're going down. I just think that's going to slow down to more of what we've seen prior to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And what we try to do with on the real estate slash private equity side is really still just have a balanced portfolio. Like you want to shield the taxes as much as possible, also still get the cash flow, right? But then on the back end, see the capital appreciation. So it's very much like, counseling your and advising your customers on how to create a balanced portfolio for whatever, goals that they might have. But capital appreciation certainly being one of them without having the tax hit as much as possible, right? So that's great.
Yeah.
Um, uh, we've primarily focused on young investors,
Yeah.
right? They could be married, they could be single, but young
Yeah.
investors. Uh, what do you counsel your investors that are kind of nearing the retirement timeline, right?
Yeah.
5 years out, maybe 7 years out or so. What type of advice would you give them? And I've heard things like maybe a Roth ladder, potentially,
Yeah.
other type of strategies like that.
Yeah, great. Well, hey, I want to put in one plug here real quick. My
Sure.
my financial firm is called the Mill Financial Partners, and when we started 6 years ago, Mill is actually short for millennial. We focus in on high income earning millennials because we have challenges that our parents just cannot relate to, right?
Right.
Like grandma never really had to worry about how much data she was going to buy for her phone, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
yeah, the Wi-Fi bill wasn't a thing for her, right? And
Yeah.
so many unique challenges. I'm just going to say this, like, the baby boomer generation has really kind of shat on us a lot, right? Both
Yeah.
verbally
Yeah.
And actually, right, we're going to be in a hole, and I think our generation is up to digging us out of it,
Hmm.
right? But from going to graduating into an awful job economy to, if you're trying to buy a new house for the first time, dear gosh, right? I mean, so there's no way Social Security is going to be there in the way that it is right now, right?
Hmm.
And then you look at also like, okay, listen, if you had money pre-COVID, you now have a shit ton of money, right? Like, so if you were old and you had money, your net worth probably has doubled in the last 5 years. That's insane right there,
Right.
right? So, if you've got a measly $500,000 or a million, but $500,000, sure, it's, 750 now, 800, right? But if you had 3 million, buddy, you're doing good, right? So, I think it's important for us to know that as millennials, I say that, John, I don't know how old you are, but as a younger person, right, that we need to understand that what got us here may not get us there. And we're going to
Right.
have to do some creative thinking here outside of the box to supplement with more of the fundamental financial planning to help get us to financial security, right? But to answer your question, we obviously work with a lot of retirees, and we always have, and a lot of our industry is kind of geared towards that. And so, we are what we're looking at doing, in from a Roth conversion standpoint, is that let's look at this in detail. A Roth conversion makes so much sense on when you first think about it, but then when you take a deeper look and you realize that, oh, I want to have 70 cents working for me instead of a full dollar. When is the break
Right.
even on that? And the truth is that the break even on that is at death. That's when it matters. Because
Yeah.
if you if you are if you die and you leave a 401k behind, bad planning. You did not have a financial advisor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we're doing, John, is we are making certain that our older clients understand the idea of buckets of money, different buckets with different purposes, with different time horizons, with different risk tolerances. Okay. And we are realizing, hey, we're going to pull money from here and then from here and then from here. Well, what does that mean? That means your Roth IRA should be shooting for the damn moon. It means that your Roth IRA is probably a form of life insurance. I hope we never touch it. I hope we leave it to the next generation, right? So we need to be as aggressive as possible, right? But you know what? Your IRA, that's going to be probably the first place that we touch there. So maybe we get our bonds in there because it's in the IRA, so the interest isn't going to be taxable income to us, right?
Right.
And we're going to liquidate that entire IRA before we go touch your taxable dollars, and certainly before we touch your Roth dollars. And the reason being, John, is that your money is going to grow and compound no matter where it is, right? So, let's say taxable versus an IRA, right? Let's say they're invested in the S&P 500. They're both growing, they're both compounding, right? Well, the longer we leave money in that IRA, we're not only compounding the money, we're compounding the taxes that we are going to owe on that money. We're compounding the RMDs, right? So I
Right.
think the biggest misconception that we run into with older people is that they look at this and they look at their money as one piece, one piece. Okay. And they want, hey, I want to get a 4% rate of withdrawal because I heard that that's a safe rate of withdrawal. So I'm just going to get a 4% from all of my assets. Right.
Right.
And that
Right.
way, I never touch the principal, I'll live off the interest. Right. Okay. No, no, we're not going to do that, right? Because the truth is that if we do that, we're going to give up a lot of potential for growth. So we're going to have our Roth IRA full growth. We'll have our taxable, maybe all stock, but maybe some dividends and maybe a little bit safer, right? And then we'll have our IRAs, a nice little 60-40 traditional mix, right? We'll pull from there first, and then we'll go to the taxable, and then hopefully we'll pass that Roth IRA on to our children. The only thing, John, if you are 55 and you want to retire in 5 years, and I hope I didn't scare you with that millennial comment, because the Mill Financial Partners is also short for millionaire, okay? But we do work with a lot of retirees and their kids. But if you're 55 and you want to retire in the next 5 years, you've got a big problem. And you don't know it yet, but your problem is that you are going to have to spend probably about 2K a month on health insurance. Okay.
Right.
Right.
And I've heard like 3 or 4K on health insurance.
Possibly, man.
Yeah,
Possibly. It's enough to make you go back to work, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
enough to make you go back to work. That being said, here's what we do. This is one area where I'm going to totally reverse what I just said. Okay. For 5 years, you're not going to take a single damn dime out of your IRA. We're
Right,
going to pull everything out of the taxable account because now all of a sudden we're not going to show much income. We might still have some income from dividends and interest, whatever, right? But we're not going to show any income. What that means is now we're going to be able to qualify for the Obamacare subsidy here for the Affordable Care Act, and we are going to basically pay nothing for our health insurance. We're going to have no deductible. We're going to have phenomenal health insurance here because we are showing zero income on this
right,
thing.
right.
It's beautiful. It's
Yeah,
beautiful, right? And so that's the one area where, okay, we are going to pull from the taxable account first, and then once you hit 65 and you both go on Medicare, then we're going to switch fully over to the IRA.
yeah, yeah. I've heard that strategy as well. Like if you're retiring before, full Social Security age, then or you qualify for Medicare, you go with the ACA, right? Go with
Yeah, oh,
Obamacare.
100% right. Now, if you don't, okay, so let's say, spouse is a teacher, okay, and they love teaching, or then maybe they're trying to stay on for the pension plan,
Right.
but the other spouse retires, okay, that all of a sudden might be a really good opportunity for a partial Roth conversion, because now all of a sudden we can manipulate the tax brackets and maybe
Right.
max out that 12% or that 22% tax bracket there with the Roth conversion. Because the truth is, for a Roth conversion, in my opinion, to make sense, you need to at least have one or two things. You need to have a low income year. So, hey, if you're in transition right now, if you lost a job, I would be thinking about a Roth conversion right now, right? If
Mhm.
you're in between jobs and you're high level and maybe you go full year without a job, yeah, we need to talk, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
things you can do this year that could really help. So, lower income or a dip in the market. Okay. Now, if you have both, game on. Like 2008 through 10, great time for a Roth conversion, right? Because you had a million, it went down 40% to 600,000. You convert, you pay taxes on the 600,000. What does that do? It then goes, it jumps back up to a million, but now you have a million in a Roth bucket that you'll never pay taxes again, right?
Hmm.
So that's a really good opportunity when the markets dip for a Roth conversion. So we're looking ideally for both, but if we can at least have one of those, then I think that it's a conversation worth having.
Nice. I love that strategy. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, we are about time. Time flew by really quickly, and thank you very much for that. We ask all of our guests a couple of questions. One is, what if you look back, call it 10 years, and could give yourself some advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit here. All right. So number one, I'm so glad I didn't quit. I remember the point I was crying. There was a time where before I had married my wife, we split rent there, and there was a couple months where I didn't pay her the rent, and she didn't say a damn thing to me and was so supportive. And I
That's when you knew you had to marry her. It's like that's
right, man. That's
yeah.
right. But realistically, I would do two things differently. Number one, I waited just a little bit too long to buy my first house. I would have
Mm,
bought my first house right out of college, because I was actually living in an area where homes were really cheap and a really good rental market.
mhm.
The one thing I would do as a parent, I'm actually putting money away for my daughter here, so that we're going to be able to buy her a house wherever she goes to college, and we'll be 50-50 owners in that house there.
Yep.
And,
That's great.
I think the best thing you could ever give your kid is maybe a 10 or 20% down payment on their first home,
Yeah.
right? And so that's one thing that I regret not doing. That's one thing I will do for my kids. And then the second thing is I would have trusted the stock market more. I didn't trust the stock market when I got in this thing, right?
Yeah.
I didn't. And that was coming from a business owner parent, and a doomsdayer and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and surrounding yourself with it's a tough time in '08, and we're from a very heavily real estate and construction based, and we saw some of the biggest titans of our community fall, and it's
Yeah,
seemingly the world was falling. And I would, when you see red in the streets, you need to run out and invest more. And so the one thing I've
right.
learned is that the next time that seemingly happens, run into the streets and invest more. So those are the two things I would have told myself. Buy a house, just another home a little bit quicker, and then
Yeah.
trust the stock market.
Yeah, and I would piggyback on your first one, which is, and we didn't do this enough, like take advantage of the 500, 250 or 500K shield on your essentially profit on your house, right?
Yeah.
2 out of every 5 years. This is coming from my CPA years, but 2 out of every 5 years, you can just have to live in your house for 2 years, move
Yeah.
after 5 years, upgrade your house. You can shield your profits up to 500K, and you
Yeah.
keep doing it every 5 years, and you're upgrading your house.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I'd have done that, John. I obviously I bought 6 homes, 7 homes now. I've never sold a home. I'm
Mm.
scared to sell a home. But
Yep.
right now, John, like we had to reduce our rents to get people to come. Like the rent
Yeah.
market's soft. But guess what hasn't reduced? My property taxes, my home insurance, right?
Right. Right.
Utility bills, right? So my revenue's gone down, my expenses have gone up. And I still got to go fix the plumbing issue after this Zoom call today.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, and that's where if I were to okay, if we were to go back to 2022 when the housing market was still up and the stock market was down, yeah, I would have liquidated all my real estate, put it
Yes.
all in the
Yeah.
stock market, right? And then I would have borrowed against that stock market and sent 50 cents to you to go
Right.
do what you do best, right? That's
Yeah.
so yeah. I mean, the truth is, if we all had a time machine, we would be Biff from Back to the Future, like where he
Right.
goes and delivers the sports almanac, and we would just have two words, right? Buy Bitcoin, right? If we,
Right.
right? Like,
That's
yeah, just
right.
buy right? If we all had a time machine, that's what we would probably do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't, and that's what makes life fun. You live and you earn.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. The other question we ask our guests is, how do you give back to your community?
Yeah, yeah. Hey, that's a great question. I heard you ask that. I've been listening to your podcast. I've heard you ask that for a couple of people, and I expected that question. And this is going to sound like a phony answer, and I'm not happy with it. I'm not going to lie, right? I'm not happy with it. Um, I get so much fulfillment from helping people at doing what I do. I don't necessarily feel a need to go out there and volunteer somewhere else.
Hmm.
To do that at this point in my life, right? I
Yeah.
will say this, as my daughter gets older, we have volunteered. So by the way, that doesn't mean I don't give back and I don't volunteer. I'm just saying I don't feel a huge urge to at this point in my life. But we have done Meals on Wheels. We do that a lot. I want to make certain that we get our kids out every single weekend doing that
Yeah.
so they can just
That's
see
great.
other homes and get outside of our neighborhood, right? We there's a something called the Drake House here in Alpharetta that takes in single mothers and gives them free rent for 6 months, and also gives them financial lessons and life lessons. And so I've mentored a lot of those kids as well
That's
there.
great.
Right. So I should admittedly do more.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a lot already. Like the one thing I wish that someone would have pulled me aside and, told me a little bit more about, financial planning and like,
Yeah.
how to budget, and frankly, like how important businesses are, business
Yeah.
ownership is, right? No one
Yeah.
really teaches that in school. They're starting to teach that in high school, but no one really teaches that. And I wish someone had just pulled me aside and said, hey, think about this. Look at, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and
Yeah.
all those other things.
I wonder if I were to retitle my book, it might be like what they didn't teach you in high school, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But the truth is that I don't think Uncle Sam wants you to know about that.
Right. Right.
If you're a high earning W-2, you are the bell cow of our nation. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying for our troops on the ground and the new roads we've got, you know.
Yeah.
So,
And refilling the Social Security coffers, right?
absolutely right. So, I don't know if it's in Uncle Sam's best interest to teach you to be a business owner, right? And
Right, right.
listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of things out there about how John D. Rockefeller was important about getting the schools. So basically, they would create people for their lines at their factories and stuff like that, right? And,
Yeah.
and I think there might be something, I don't know, right? But, I think there's a reason maybe that they don't teach us that stuff.
Right, right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for the conversation today, Alan. We learned quite a bit, a lot of information. Alan, if people were interested in your services, finding out more information about you, I know you have a podcast.
Yep.
Could you talk about all the different ways people can reach you?
Yes. All right. So I think the best way to reach me is if you go to our book website, that's empowered-money.com, empowered-money.com. On there, you can see our podcast, you can see my news appearances, you can buy our book, obviously, but on there, there is a free financial plan on there, a 10-minute, probably less 10-minute financial plan. If you could go on there and fill that out just to see your trajectory there, I'm just going to let you know. I'm going to capture that lead and I'm going to give you a call. All right. So I'm giving you a warning here, right? But that would allow us to have a really good conversation right off the top because I can see where a lot of your stuff is, what your trajectory and where we might be able to help. But
Right.
also on that website, you can just book a call directly with me as well. So empowered-money.com, empowered-money.com. And from there, you can schedule and reach out and find more about us.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and we'll put that information on the podcast, the webinar as well. Thank you again, Alan, for all the time that you've taken out of your busy schedule to speak to our audience. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our podcast or webinar on whichever platform you're listening to. And of course, that will help us make sure that we continue to bring you the best educational content ever. Thanks, everyone. Until next time, keep learning to invest for generational wealth. Thanks.